chapters 11 and 13, which cover muscle building agents and supplements. In the world of pharmacology, this has become a big issue and area because, of course, the Food and Drug Administration does not regulate supplements and all the various muscle building agents and energy drinks and things that are on the current market. And this can lead to problems when we look at drug testing in our athletes, whether you look at USADA for USOC or NCAA requirements. Again, there are potential ramifications of individuals taking things that are not regulated, leading to sanctions against them as an athlete. Additionally, in the world of pharmacology, there's become an increased number of drug interactions which are starting to be logged by the pharmacists and the FDA when there are drug interactions, but since these supplements and other agents are not tested thoroughly and for their side effects, efficacy, and things along those lines, it becomes a little bit of the wild, wild west. So, what are muscle building agents? Well, of course, as athletic trainers, we work with a lot of athletes who would be enticed to use a muscle building agent. And why? Well, it used to occur in power sports, but now it's abused by athletes in all different settings who are more willing to use drugs or supplements, whether it's blood, for a variety of ergogenic purposes. In other words, for sport enhancement. Whether it is taking a drug or a supplement that will lower your heart rate, so in the biathlon you can shoot better, or it's taking an actual steroid to increase muscle strength for power endurance. Again, blood itself and blood doping, adding red blood cells so you have better oxygenation carrying. Again, all these things are occurring. And then you have the non-athletes who are using these or the weekend warriors for body image. So when you work in the high schools and middle schools, the use of anabolic steroids and other muscle building agents is occurring, and that's why there's actually state drug testing in some. But the highest individual use is from individuals who are trying to look good. For the male, that may be they've got to have the six-pack, they've got to be cut, they've got to be ripped, and so they're trying to achieve that. And what better way than to do it chemically induced? Patients and athletes of all levels and ages often utilize or abuse these supplements or medication. Don't think just because you're working high school, middle school, or at the collegiate level that this is not being abused or might not be being abused by the individual. Again, when people are vying for scholarships, vying for potentially moving on to professional level, even if it's in the sport of tennis, when you start getting into sponsorships and other things, that can be large dollar signs that risk versus reward for that individual athlete. They may decide to take it even though they know there's a risk of them getting caught through drug testing. Obviously, professional athletes, football, baseball, track, table tennis, and the list goes on. College athletes and students as well are using anabolic steroids and other muscle building agents. And then you have your non-athletes, as I mentioned earlier, that may be dealing with body image or career field related. They need to keep up a certain image if they're working in the fitness industry, and they do it through muscle agents or steroids. So, ergogenic aids used by patients and athletes. Steroids, of course, is one that gets most of the headlines, but this includes HGH, human growth hormone, DHEA, and HMB. You have creatine. Now, creatine is not necessarily illegal at all levels, but creatine you can only take in certain dose amounts. At the NCAA level, institutions, teams cannot provide creatine to their athletes. However, athletes are not banned from taking it, but in some high school states, for example, Texas being one, creatine is outlawed for use with those high school athletes. So again, depending on where you're at, and again at the collegiate level, creatine is not outlawed. Other miscellaneous nutritional supplements, all nutritional supplements, the key here to realize is they're unregulated. So all the things you've learned about previously about an FDA drug or food and all the testing it has to go through, anything in a GNC store that is not a food product, so I say a GNC store or other ergogenic aid selling type store, has not gone through any of this testing to verify efficacy, safety, etc. So they're unregulated and untested, which makes it dangerous, especially if the athlete is at the collegiate level where they're subject to drug testing. The same at the USOC, but if they are participating in a national governing body such as USA Soccer, USA Volleyball, and they're competing in the different championships, they are subject to testing as well. So performance enhancement testing is going to occur. Famous steroid use and abuse cases. Back in 1988, Ben Johnson was disqualified. Hungary and Bulgarian weightlifting teams withdrew early from the Olympics because of the potential for their cycle. Of course, Androstenedione and Mark McGuire in 1998 excelled in baseball and made Andro a very controversial supplement that was eventually banned by several professional sports. 2004, Barry Bonds with THG. So we know it's out there, and we know that there are even professionals willing to skirt the limits, like with Andrew. Well, it's not illegal. Well, did it have an ergogenic effect or not? Did it give that individual an unfair advantage? Again, there's been lots of debates, but the bottom line is this is why USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency, is constantly updating yearly, and WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, as well as the NCAA, may change what is on their list of banned and not banned year to year. So this is an area that you have to keep up with. So steroids, you have your anabolic and androgenic steroids. Androgenic give you male sex characteristics. Anabolic enhance tissue metabolism. So testosterone, male and females both have testosterone in them at the appropriate levels. But if you add additional testosterone, you're going to have some of these anabolic and androgenic effects. And of course, Androstenedione in females as well. So bloodborne, you have really three ways for testosterone to work. The sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG, is not readily available to the tissues. 30% male, 58% female. It's usually bound to album, loosely bound, and 67% of males, 40% of females. And it's unbound or free in 3% of males and in 2% of females. So it's floating around. Now, if it becomes artificially inflated, that's going to change those percentages, and your body's homeostatic state is not going to be maintained, and then it's going to trigger effects or side effects of an individual who's taking testosterone or steroids. So anabolic steroids, there are medical purposes for these medications, which is why regulation and control does exist. We can't just say they're completely illegal or banned. Some are, but some are have actual medical purposes for breast cancer, male hypogonadism, for anemia, anorexia, micropenis, delayed puberty, male contraception, and in the management and treatment of various dwarfism conditions. So there are medical purposes. Now, non-medical purposes of use of these or abuse of these would be to increase muscular strength, by increasing muscle protein synthesis, inhibiting the catabolic effects of glucocorticoids, and increasing aggressive behavior. That increasing aggressive behavior, which can be a very bad thing if you've heard of roid rage, where somebody goes out of control, but that same side effect gives the person intensity and aggressiveness to complete their workout or train harder. So that's where that trade-off is. It may improve aerobic tendencies, but there is still no proven studies currently that show that anabolic steroids actually improve aerobic tendencies. If anything, there are studies to show that taking these medications puts a strain on the cardiovascular system, potentially weakening both vessels as well as the cardiac muscle that's being affected. Abuse of anabolic steroids, of course, muscle building or performance enhancement. So you think of bodybuilders, you think of a lot of different athletes in power sports, weightlifting, football has seen its fair share, but bodybuilding is another big area. They even had at one point and still do a steroid and a steroid-free category for bodybuilding, for performance enhancement. These medications come in oral and injectable and even in creams. If you remember the Barry Bonds case, and maybe some of you do not, it's something to Google or look up. It was about what his trainer was applying to him in a liniment or an ointment that actually had the substance in it that was helping him perform, or allegedly helping him perform. So body image improvement and enhancement I cannot stress this area enough. In today's day and age of social media, and we think about kids, both at the youth level all the way through college and high school, there's a certain image, and now we're seeing steroid use and abuse to create that image, especially in male subjects that are supposed to look cut, look fit, have that 6-8 pack abs to go to the beach. They're supposed to look a certain way, and some people are willing to take those while they're doing basic regular workouts and lifts so that they can have that ideal body image that is out there in the media. So something to consider. Steroids are often taken in some type of cycling. A lot of high-tech cycling plans have been developed to try to beat various drug testing. That's why USADA and WADA, if you are a NGB athlete, you can be tested at any time, anywhere. They can show up and they can test, and they will test both blood and or urine or both. So again, anytime, anywhere, and the point of that is to deter things like this where people are put on cycles. So supercutting cycling, again, you can go to different websites that talk about this, but again, this is taking medication that is not approved for your use and then applying somebody who's come up with some cycle that hopefully will get it out of your system prior to an event, or will be masked. But again, testing positive for masking agents in most drug testing systems is also going to be considered a positive test as well. So cycling doesn't really work, although it's touted by those who are trying to sell it illegally, because again, if you can sell it, then they're going to make money, but it does not. Cycling is not going to prevent you from popping positive on a drug test in most cases. Defining muscles. So if we're trying to get good muscle definition, a common steroid is oxandrolone or Anvar. So think of your bodybuilders for this one. If you're looking for size, now this could be somebody looking for strength and power as well as bodybuilding. Nandrolone, decononate, and testosterone, sapononate are common steroids that are taken to do these. Again, there's some medical purposes when we have muscle wasting diseases or dwarfism where these may be valuable to an individual patient, but for use of a healthy individual, these will not be helpful. There are adverse effects of the use of androgenic and anabolic steroids. Males, your testicles may cease to produce sperm if you're using anabolic steroids. It can cause oligospermia, which means your sperm count becomes low. Azoospermia, which is the lack of sperm in the semen. And then a decrease in the testicular size, as mentioned before, and a decreased production of testosterone. So it almost becomes counterproductive, but the body shuts down some of these systems because it's being added to the body artificially. Gynecomastia, which is the development of female-type breast enlargement, it is not reversible. If somebody's been on anabolic steroids and this occurs, as a result of that, it's not reversible. As far as when they come off of it, it would have to be a surgical fix at that point. Premature balding, severe acne problems on the face and chest or back area, the upper back. And then it can, for adolescents who are abusing these medications, can cause premature closure of growth plates, enlargement of the prostate at a young age. It leads to impetus, and there's some irony there that, okay, I'm getting bigger, buff, stronger, so I look better, perform better, but now I can't perform sexually. And it has long-term effects, as previously mentioned, for a person young is making decisions that may cause them not to be able to have a family later in life. So decrease in libido, glucose intolerance. This is another thing to look for in an individual if you suspect or are seeing some of these signs and symptoms. Are they developing insulin resistance and don't seem to have normal health factors or risk factors for type 2 or type 1 diabetes? Ataxia and tendon ruptures. The anabolic steroids, ironically, will create some weakness within tendon structures while the muscle gets strong and can result in rupture of tendons. So depending on what type of injuries you're seeing across your patient population, epidemiological study could hone into some people who may be using steroids. With females, you have some of the reverse effects. You have masculinization that's going to occur, the development of facial hair, male pattern baldness, and a deepened voice tone for the female. They developed an enlarged clitoris, decrease in breast size, the menstrual cycle changes, and those changes can vary literally patient to patient, and it can also lead to amenorrhea. They will have acne problems, a reduction in libido as well, and they will have mood swings. Human growth hormone, if it's being used, it is an endogenous hormone, so that means the body does produce it, and it is produced in the pituitary gland, but it facilitates amino acid transport, which increasing protein synthesis. It maintains your blood glucose levels, and it assists in releasing fatty acid from your adipose tissue or your fat cells. So it's going to release those fatty acids to be used to be burned up, which then would cause decrease in weight. Legitimate medical uses for human growth hormone do exist. It's usually to help with improper growth in children and adolescents. It's rarely used, and it may be used in older people to inject to maintain youth. So there are few, very narrow window, legitimate medical uses for human growth hormone. Often what is sold as HGH by individuals to people who are trying to find steroids is not human growth hormone. It may be from a pig, it may be from another animal, or it may not even be any of those that would be similar. So you never know what you're going to get from, again, a criminal who is selling drugs on the black market. So why is human growth hormone, though, the ultimate steroid that individuals would like to use, because it's hard today to almost non-detectable via drug testing, because your body actually produces it. It's naturally occurring in your body. Now, there are synthetic versions of human growth hormone which are used medically, and those can be detectable. But if you can get true HGH, then it's going to become very difficult for detection. It does produce the steroid-like changes. It does have adverse effects when you have high levels of human growth hormone, so acromegaly, hypertension, cardiomyopathy, so cardiac enlargement, respiratory disease, diabetes because of the regulation of glucose that occurs by HGH, abnormal lipid metabolism. Again, it's freeing up the free fatty acids, so the homeostatic levels get imbalanced because we're adding an increase of HGH into the system that the body's not used to having. Osteoarthritis, breast and colorectal cancers have been directly linked and associated with human growth hormone use and abuse. So, DHE and HMB, dehydroepiandrosterone, which is banned by WADA and USADA, which are the World Anti-Doping Agency and the United States Anti-Doping Agency. It's produced by the adrenal gland. It is a pro-hormone for androstenedione, testosterone precursor, and basically it acts as an anti-glucocorticosteroid agent that alleviates the stresses from exercise and training, thus increasing recovery rates. Again, not really proven that it does, but it is a banned substance. The NCAA has also looked at this as well, but for sure it's banned by WADA and USADA. And then HMB, as is commonly referred, or B-hydroxy-B-methyl butyrate, is an amino acid, leucine, and it's an anti-catabolic effects. It hasn't been shown to be effective in producing performance enhancement, yet people still feel that it does, and so it is often sold as a performance enhancement. Now, creatine is produced by the body on a daily basis. It comes from your liver, from amino acids, and your body naturally produces 1 to 2 grams per day. Intake of creatine, you get that naturally through meats and fish, and 95% of the creatine in the body is found in skeletal muscle. Now, creatine in the liver breaks down that creatine down to phosphocreatine. Phosphate is then available to work with the ADP to form ATP, and we all know that ATP provides energy source for the cell, and it's energy for short exercise bouts. So, does creatine stimulate growth hormone release? Suggestions, but there's not really evidence in the literature to support that. It can provide maybe elite athletes with some gains or increases in their ability to perform if they have creatine, or their ability to recover after intense exercise because of the helping with the protein synthesis that phosphate and creatine will allow. So recovery may be able to occur quicker, and also during activity they may be able to sustain activity longer. But creatine in most studies is shown to only benefit people who are already elite and in high levels of physical fitness. So it's used by the body to reconstitute ADP to ATP. It enhances the muscle cell ability to produce energy. So again, cells can actually produce more energy, so they can recruit more muscle fibers. If you recruit more muscle fiber per contraction, you're going to gain strength. But does it actually increase muscle strength? Well, most of the studies that have been conducted have been on 18 to 35-year-old male athletes. So the question becomes, is it just training effect, or is it actually addition of creatine to their diet or to their training routine that is increasing their strength. So creatine products themselves are sold in a powder form, but other forms exist, including liquids, gels, etc. Creatine monohydrate, it's mixed with fruit juice or other energy or power shakes. So now we have this quote-unquote energy drink. Well, it might have creatine in it, it may have caffeine, stimulants, and all kinds of other things. Or they couch it as, well, it's a fresh, good, healthy part of your food plate because it's these oranges and bananas and strawberries and ice blended together with a few powders put in. Well, those powders could be a problem. Loading phase, and this is the other problem, because it is unregulated and because now, even like at the NCAA level, an athlete can take it, but the university staff, coaches, strength coaches, nutritionists, etc., cannot provide it. So dosing of it, you're leaving the dosing of the creatine to the individual who has no training or understanding of how it should be dosed. 20 grams per day. Remember, the body produces 1 to 2. Daily dosage 3 to 5 grams per day. Body uses 1 to 2 grams per day. So again, what should the dosage be? Now, there are a lot of studies out there trying to figure this out, but if we as healthcare providers or the sports nutritionists on your staff or the strength coaches aren't able to provide that information, then that's going to be problematic. Creatine benefits, there is an anaerobic effort increase for weightlifting, sprint activities, which are anaerobic activities, and then rest periods are valuable for recovery. Trained versus an untrained athletes. Trained athletes may be storing creatine and not benefit as much as untrained athletes. This goes back and forth in the literature. It is not helpful in aerobic activities. So your cross-country runner that is taking creatine probably shouldn't be. It's not going to provide them benefit. Not everyone stores creatine. About 30% of people don't utilize storage. So some people's metabolism, because again, every person's different, as we learned early on in pharmacokinetics and dynamics, 30% don't utilize storage or store creatine at all. It can create kidney damage that has been directly related to creatine use. It's usually with heavy dose. People are taking large doses that are way outside the recommended norm, but kidney damage has been affiliated with creatine use and long-term use as well. Fluid retention and dehydration. So the person on creatine tends to retain fluid, but they become dehydrated as well. Muscle cramping and strains have been associated with it. GI distress and diarrhea. Not all of these have been documented to be true, but several have been documented in more recent literature, such as the muscle cramping, the kidney damage, and the fact that, of course, not everyone stores creatine. So, what about chromium picolinate? This is a trace mineral needed for CHO and lipid metabolism. It basically works with insulin. It may be at the receptor sites. It's really promoted as a way to change your body composition. It's going to increase urinary output of creatine. There's not really going to be a change in body composition. The reported adverse effects include anemia, liver dysfunction, renal failure, and deleterious cellular changes, meaning random changes throughout the cells in different locations. So again, this being found in muscle building agents that are marketed or an individual seeking it, it really doesn't have value for performance enhancement, but it is out there. Now, androstenedione is known as andro. It's a testosterone or an estrogen precursor. It's an exogenous androstenedione is taken by a male has the effects of supplementing the endogenous androstenedione supplies and providing more testosterone. And if we put more testosterone in the system, then we get more male sex characteristics, one of those including muscle development. So, androstenedione has not, though, been proven to increase muscle size and does have no effect on protein synthesis or muscle mass. That's been shown in current literature and current studies. So, we say it's a performance enhancement, but the evidence doesn't support it. And that's why for a while, androstenedione was not a banned substance. Eventually, professional baseball and others banned it, which created the controversy within baseball and the home run race because the one player had been using Andrew. So again, but he was using it prior to it being banned. So it's been marketed as a dietary supplement as well and can be purchased at a lot of your nutritional supplement stores. The IOC, WADA, USADA, and the National Football League have banned Andro, to name a few of the sport governing bodies. It is important as an athletic trainer you become aware of drug testing and drug testing policies and what's banned where. When you are working with athletes, that can also be a way for you to deter athletes from using things like androstenedione. If you have an athlete who wants to go on to the NFL, then it would be smart of them not to be using androstenedione since it is a banned substance, and if they're drug tested going into the NFL, then they're going to have a sanction against them. Obviously, at a lot of colleges and universities, you may be working with Olympic athletes, and often we think of the U.S. athletes, but if you have foreign athletes on your teams, I know of a junior college back when I was in grad school, that the athletic trainer there said, yeah, one of her athletes came up to her and said, yeah, I'm going to the Olympics. It was the Australian Olympics. He's going to be playing basketball in the Olympics. And she looked at him like, huh? He's like, well, he was from Australia, and while he was good enough to play point guard at a junior college in California, and he wasn't getting offers to play up at Division I or whatever, he was outstanding in Australia, so he was on their Olympic team. So you may have a mix or a variety of different Olympic athletes, and you need to be familiar with WADA and USADA regulation and rules, because those are different than NCAA rules on what is banned and what is not banned. So adverse effects are similar to those of anabolic steroids for androstenedione in both male and female. So those previous slides, the acne, increased aggression, those things may occur with somebody who's on androstenedione. Now let's talk about supplements. Supplements, of course, are marketed to consumers who want to feel better, look better, regardless, and not have to put forth effort. In our society, we've created a huge market because most Americans want to go take a pill and have that make them look better than actually go through the hard work of eating right, exercising, and developing a pattern of balanced living to do that. Dietary supplement market size is worth about $278 billion by 2024. This according to the report here. The global dietary supplement market is expected to reach $278 billion by 2024, which is a huge increase. Now, this is according to the report by Grandview Research. The rising obesity rates in developed economies, including in the U.S. and Germany, as a result of fluctuating dieting patterns, along with hectic work style among adults, is expected to prompt spending on nutritional supplements. Why? Because people want a pill to make them better, look better, and feel better, or something that they can just drink and go, and then they'll look thin and in fit and in shape. That's not going to happen. But the other thing to focus in on this slide about supplements is look at the dollar figure. One of the reasons why supplements are not regulated currently in the U.S. is they have a very powerful lobby in Washington, D.C. So the reason why the fact that the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act has not been amended to impact supplements is partially due to the amount of money in this industry that they have to pay lobbyists to assure that that does not happen. So none of their products, if you label it a supplement, have to go through any of the FDA testing. Nutraceuticals is a dietary or nutritional supplement used for general health benefits. So a nutraceutical is any dietary or nutritional supplement used for general health benefits. And that's what they're selling a lot of these as. There was the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act that was passed in 1994, but this allows a company to promote a natural substance with claims of improved function and health as long as the company does not claim that the supplement will affect a disease process. So you can claim this will keep you healthy, but you can't say it will kill the flu virus, okay? So you can't talk about a disease process. It does not have to be tested prior to market for efficacy or safety. So ironically, the whole Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act was created around testing for efficacy and safety. And now we have supplements and an actual act regulating supplements, or lack of regulation, that does not require them to be tested. Manufacturers and distributors of dietary supplements and dietary ingredients are prohibited from marketing products that are adulterated or misbranded. So again, you can't misbrand them, but it says that products are adulterated or misbranded. Well, the problem is when these supplements are put together by their manufacturers, since there's no testing or research required for efficacy or safety, they may or may not know what's in there. So there may be some misbranding and labeling, which has been proven in several studies where they've randomly pulled supplements off the shelf and run it through a testing lab and found that they don't match up, but it's not intentional. So that means that these firms are responsible for evaluating the safety and labeling of their products before marketing to ensure that they meet all the requirements of the DHEA and FDA regulations. The problem is those regulations are very, very small. A 2014 survey, which is in its 15th consecutive year, found that 68% of U.S. adults report taking dietary supplements. 68% of the adult population in the U.S. is taking some form of supplement, including over 50% who report being regular users, and the majority of U.S. adults, 83%, express overall confidence in the safety, quality, and effectiveness of dietary supplements. Here's the problem. They've done a great job at marketing, because if 83% of adults, not everybody's using them, okay? So 50% are taking them on a regular basis. 83% still perceive them as safe. Yet they don't have to go through any of the testing or prove themselves like medication or food does. So why do we perceive these as safe? Marketing. They've done an excellent job. So if we continue to look at the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, in order for herbal and natural supplement manufacturers to avoid the FDA's rigorous testing process, they just market their natural supplement as a food product. So I can still get away with less testing if I classify it as a food product. So they know all the different ways to move their product through to avoid high levels of testing. There are numerous products on the market that purport to be ergogenic in nature, but they have not been subjected to the same rigorous scientific experimentation as the FDA-approved drugs, as I've been saying all along, and as a result, there's no facts to back up the claim. So, as an athletic trainer, you need to be aware of the different types of natural supplements that are out there and the fact that they can interact with medications and create problems. And you need to be aware of what your patients are taking and how that's going to impact drug testing policies or performance, as well as interaction with medication. Nowadays, on pre-participation physical exam, there should be a question: are you taking any supplements, and if so, what are you taking? Because often in the line that says, are you currently taking any medications, prescription or over the counter, that's all the patient's going to list, because they don't consider supplements medications. So there is risks associated with taking certain supplements, and that the combination of the natural products with prescription drugs can lead to adverse reactions. And the FDA is doing an excellent job at trying to track adverse reactions between supplements and medications. So the term natural is generally accepted as meaning anything that is not artificial or that is produced by nature. That's how the average layperson accepts and takes that definition. Companies and manufacturers use this term because the public equates it with safety. If it's all natural, it's safe. Unfortunately, poison ivy is all natural, but you're not going to go out and run around in it. Okay? Poison sumac, the same thing. So it's all natural, but that doesn't mean it's good for you, or that there's not going to be a side effect. Almost anything put into the body that has the potential to create a negative response. So anytime you're adjusting a foreign substance, your body could have a reaction negatively or positively. So supplements purity, the amount of active ingredients stated on the supplement product's label is not always the actual amount found in the tablets or the powder in the container. When the amount of the natural substances is disclosed reliably, numerous different types of problems, including toxicity, may result. So, how much of a natural substance is in there, and if it's not disclosed and you take it, there may be dose limits for what you're being exposed to, but you're not going to know that because there's no purity label. Toxicity, the use of these supplements can be toxic to teenage and adult athletes as well. Toxicity of an herbal supplement is a function of multiple variables such as the dose taken, other drugs or herbs being taken at the time that these supplements are taken, duration and frequency of exposure. So how often are you taking these? So toxicity could build up, it may not, but it's multifactorial or has multiple variables that we have to take into consideration. Interactions, herbal or natural supplements can reduce the effectiveness of medications. So sometimes the reaction is just negating the effectiveness of a medication or a treatment plan that the patient is currently on. Then you have contamination. The FDA has proposed only a few manufacturing guidelines, and companies are free to adopt the FDA's said guidelines, but free to adopt. They don't have to adopt. There is little regulation of compliance, and a company is investigated only if there's a formal complaint lodged against that company or manufacturing facility. But if you run one batch down a line and then you run the second batch, you risk cross-contamination unless you have a thorough cleaning process. So again, something we have to think about. Natural ergogenic aids. Ergogenic means having the ability to increase work, especially to increase the potential for work. So that's a strict definition of ergogenic. It can be as simple as the type of food or sports drink or natural substance taken to enhance energy, or as a sophisticated as prescription drug that can cause physiological changes and psychological changes as well. Some ergogenic substances are illegal and have a higher potential for being life-threatening and or abused. So that gets into the scheduled drug, but again, ergogenic aids as well. Substances considered ergogenic include sports drinks, dietary techniques, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and supplements, to name a few. Again, each agency, USADA, WADA, IOC, NCAA, may change the definition of ergogenic aid or institutional policy.